Okay, so we're talking about Genghis Khan and the Mongols, obviously. So under Genghis Khan, the Mongol army became a technologically advanced force and created the second largest kingdom in history. So again, to get credit, you just have to copy down the slide. So like for this one, you would just write Genghis Khan and the Mongols, just so that you know what the title is. Okay. Oh, backwards. So the early Mongols. So at the time, Mongol nomadic farmers relied on land to sustain them. They had flocks of goats, sheep, horses, and other animals, and they were dependent on an abundance of grass and water. So the Mongols had to travel frequently to sustain their livestock. Drought and disease could wipe out an entire livestock quickly, so they did have to move rather quickly. So these small nomadic tribes lived in like portable tents called yurts. They were skilled herders of sheep, horses, and camels in Central Asia. They were very aggressive towards their enemies, and they would loosely organize into tribes and clans, which just like helped them build their empire slowly. So again, you just need to write down these 4 points for this slide. You can always pause. I'm going to go rather quickly so that I can not make this video too long. Okay, so this just shows how quickly they expanded to physically cover the entire continent. And they did it rather quickly if you look at the time frame at the bottom. Like within 80 years, they expanded to cover all of this land. Okay, so the rise of Genghis Khan. So his empire was founded in 1206 when Timurj, the son of a Mongol chieftain, assumed power and changed his name to Genghis Khan, which just means like universal ruler. The young warrior had already defeated the Mongols' most powerful leader and former and like just like secured his place as like the leader among the old people. So Genghis Khan would prove to be one of history's greatest leaders. Um, his father again was originally the clan chief. He becomes the clan leader and defeats his rival to unify the Mongols. And then he also takes the title of Genghis Khan, which again means universal ruler. Okay, so their war strategies and tactics. The Mongols used bows and arrows and swords, but also cannons, which was a new technology for the time. They were very skilled at attacking on horseback. And again, if you've like ever seen a battle, the people on the horses typically win because you can shoot down or stab down. And they often faked a retreat to lure enemies into a trap, and then they would slaughter them all. So they were very brutal, and they also they adapted very quickly. Okay, so Genghis Khan created an elite group of 10,000 young warriors from all the tribes that were loyal to him. He based his military positions on merit, not who your family was. So the better you were at your job, the higher you would rise. So this means that he was putting people in charge of the military who actually were good at their job. They just weren't a position of title because of who they knew. So this helped his army a lot because his generals, if you want to call them, were actually skilled. They also showed no mercy to those who opposed them, but they were welcoming to all who wanted to join them. So that helped him grow as well. Here is a little quote. It says, "The greatest happiness is to vanquish your enemies, to chase them before you, to rob them of their wealth, to see those dear to them bathe in tears, to clasp to your bosom their wives and daughters." So yeah, that's a little aggressive. Conquest. So, some major conquests that helped the Mongols build their empire was they attacked China in 1215 and burned 90 cities to the ground. They also sacked and burned two of the greatest Silk Road cities in Central Asia, which not only gave them access to those cities, but the ports along the Silk Road, which are going to help them expand their trade empire. Also, anyone who resisted, they're like when they came into town, anyone who resisted, you were destroyed. So men were executed, women were sold as slaves if they were not willing to just like abandon their city and join the Mongol cause. But however, anyone who submitted became a part of the Mongol Empire. A good example of this is Korea. Korea just like agreed to join so that they wouldn't get slaughtered. Okay, so expansion of the Mongol Empire. So at its peak, the Mongol Empire covered the most continuous territory in history. Led at first by Genghis Khan, the empire lasted from 1206 until 1368. During this time, it expanded to cover most of Eurasia, again, thanks to the advancements in technology and their massive horde of nomadic warriors. So, again, the Mongol Empire is also called the Golden Horde because of the color of their tents and just the fact that they have so many horsemen. In 1279, Genghis Khan's grandson conquered China, Tibet, and Vietnam, and he will found the Yang dynasty in China. You're going to learn real quickly that I suck at pronouncing everything, and I apologize dearly. So, after the Mongol conquest, there was 100 years of peace. The Mongols policed the roads and made travel safe throughout Eurasia, and the Silk Road trade increased. Again, this is a free trade system. You are not being taxed heavily to use this trading system. However, there were harsh punishments for criminals, and this was to help deter crime. Again, they didn't want the people traveling on this road to be robbed or to feel like they were in danger. They wanted it to be safe. Um, Through the Mongol Empire, they were able to unite parts of China, India, Central Asia, the Muslim Middle East, and Russia. And because all of these different places were uniting, that allowed for just like new cultures, ideas, and technologies to spread. Okay, so under Genghis Khan, there are economic and social reforms that I'm going to talk about a little bit. We talked about this is how he gained a lot of his followers, or he would like just capture them, or he would forcibly relocate many artisans and merchants to Central Asia to help grow his society. He also is credited for creating a written Mongol language. He did practice religious tolerance, so he allowed for the spread of Buddhism, Islam. Um, no one was like out or banished or considered an outcast if you were not prescribing to the desired religion. And again, we talked about the Mongol mailing system, later copied or like, which unified Asia, which was just like a messenger system with horses and like postal stations. And later the US will copy it as a Pony Express. Okay, so here is the Mongol Empire. So if you look down here at the yellow lines, so this is the campaigns under him, and this is his successors. So the yellow line is everything that Genghis Khan did himself, and then after that is his son who took over. And then the blue line is the empire at his death, and then the black line is the empire when his son took over. I don't know why it switched all of a sudden. Okay, everything does come to an end. So the decline of the Mongol Empire. The empire divided into subsections. Essentially, his sons did not agree on who was going to be the leader, so they ended up splitting the territory so that everyone could get a piece of the land, which it's kind of weakened it. Because again, there's now no central leader. There's people in one land who might not want their leader or don't think that their leader has or that son has a claim to that land. So it just created tensions. And then the new leaders that took over were not as strong as Genghis Khan or his son. So again, that's causing the empire to weaken because now it's fractioned and it's not as strong because the leadership is not there. There's also resentment against Mongol rule in Russia and China at this time, so that's going to cause an uproar, and they're going to start to retaliate and try to gain like their freedom back. And the empire at this time had become a little too big and diverse to manage, especially with such weak leadership. So that's some reasons for why it failed or why it was going to decline. Um, so while the empire did, so these are just some legacies of the Mongol Empire. So the empire adapted constantly as it grew and flourished during the 162-year-long period of aggressive expansion. Again, at the peak, the Mongol Empire controlled up to like 12 million square miles. Like it is one of like the largest collections of land that's ever been under one rule. And despite its reputation for brutal warfare, the Mongol Empire did briefly support peace for about 100 years. Again, they allowed for stability through trade. And again, you're protected while you're trading during a period of Pax Mongolica, or Mongol peace, that began in about 1279 and lasted until the empire's end. But Genghis Khan's death in 1227 ultimately doomed the entire empire that he had founded. When he died, the empire started to decline, even though his direct descendant who took over was strong. The one after him was not. So eventually it would split into four. Remember I mentioned like all the sons wanted to claim? So it would split into four empires. And by 1368, all four of those empires had folded. The Mongol Empire had gained a reputation for destroying its enemies, and its spread of terror and panic as news that they were coming would spread. So, as I mentioned, the Mongols did spark a very large migrations. Not just of like their people who were coming into this land, but also as they came into land, all the people who lived there before, who were not willing to join the Mongol Empire, had to leave. They were fleeing future attacks, so that was like helping spread cultures, ideas, and languages. Because as the Mongols moved, the people who were not willing to join the Mongols also had to go farther and farther. And again, and like memories of the Mongol attack like loom for generations on end. It's rumored that Genghis Khan has roughly like 16 million descendants living today. But the Mongol Empire also left other legacies, such as the Silk Road and its history of trade, as well as like different cultural developments and just like technology, such as like gunpowder and cannons that were invented in China and used by the Mongols. As well as we mentioned, the Mongol Empire helped drastically spread the Black Death. Okay, that is the end of the notes. Hopefully it wasn't too awful or too confusing. It'll get better, I promise, hopefully. So again, all you need to do to receive credit is submit me either a Google Doc, a Google Slide, or handwritten notes of all of these slides. And that's all that I need from you. You can paraphrase if you want, as long as you get the main idea across.